All right. Well, welcome back to Co-Operatives.
Welcome back to Story Mode.
To Story Mode.
Woohoo!
Where we have Chris, Taylor, and Pikachu, and Ben.
Pika,
Your
pika!
Yes.
Yeah, well, Taylor's back after she missed the Assassin's Creed movie, but I think she's okay with that.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm kind of okay with that. I've heard it was absolutely not good, so.
You could listen to our Story Mode and hear what we have to say
Yes.
about it, which is it's an average movie with a terrible ending.
we give it a fair chance, that is for sure. But anyways, we're not talking about Assassin's Creed. Still your line. We're talking we're talking about Outlast. Because it was a game we just finished recently, or Brad and I finished recently. And while I enjoyed my experience, it's one of those things that upon reflection, I'm just like, I don't think this game delivered its story as well as it really could have. Outlast, because Taylor's not played this, I'm going to make this as brief as possible because I literally need to spend no time on this. You are a reporter who got a tip-off that there's something weird happening at this asylum.
And there's something weird happening at this asylum.
Yeah, and there's something weird happening at this asylum.
Weird as in human experimentation, satanic,
Yes.
demon summoning?
No.
Okay.
Maybe in the sequel.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So,
I mean,
was this...
I mean, in the most scientific way you could imagine, I guess.
Yes, but even then, I hypothesized that thing's still interdimensional.
So,
Perhaps.
was it human experimentation done in the name of Satanism, or Satanism-driven
Why?
human experimentation?
It was something to do, it's something to do with these dreams people kept having and kind of look into human psychology, from what I understand, other than he was a crazy scientist that I believe was also looking to prolong life.
Okay.
Which is why the nanotech kind of technology came into fruition. Satanism only because there's a character in the game called Father Martin, and not that he's a Satanist, but man, does it seem to border that. Because he keeps writing things in blood on the walls and all this other stuff, and he basically praises this being called the Wallrider and sacrifices himself in fire to it. So he performs his own human sacrifice.
I don't know if that's very strange.
It is.
It's kind of a strange game.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're literally with the craziest people imaginable in this place.
And all you do is run from them, because you don't have a gun.
Yes.
You just you can shoot things with your camera.
Yes. And you can squash people in elevators.
Oh.
That it
happens
only
once.
happens once.
I remember
really
that. I actually remember watching.
Oh yeah, because
that
I was
scene,
editing it.
and,
Yeah.
oh god, I was trying to watch.
Yeah, but if you'd gone through the scenes with that character that we did, you'd have been like, totally deserved.
I was just trying to watch my Netflix show, and then there was brutality, and how dare you?
Yeah, Ben.
Says a girl who watched Game of Thrones. Anyways, so
Don't you call me out?
at the end, and of course, this all involves a crazy German scientist who was a
Nazi?
Yes, who was a Nazi.
Of course, it's Nazis.
Because there aren't like, even though it's not possible to have any more living German scientists who were Nazis. Like, they're dead now. They're too old to be alive.
Well, and that's the funny thing, is that's how they just describe he was alive for so long.
Oh, because he did all this life-prolonging research.
Yeah.
All right, touche at last.
But yeah, he essentially created this thing called the Wallrider, which is a bunch of nanotech, like, kind of technology that it seems like it took its own personality and turned it to its own entity, being controlled by a boy that these scientists took great interest in.
Oh, shit.
But because of this, like...
Powered by an orphan soul.
Actually, yeah. And because of the psychosis of this kid having dreams of something that was... It's an old German mythological creature, which I can't remember its name right now, but it's actually...
Krampus?
No. That'd be great, though. It starts with an A, and I can't remember it. But they're basically like shadow creatures that lurk in the
Krampus?
night. Krampus?
Krampus's brother?
That goes to 11. And so at the end, I mean, basically, yeah, when all the plot happens, the last 15 minutes of the game, your goal is to stop this Wallrider by killing its hosts. Although, he's not a boy anymore. He's like a 50-year-old man who's in this weird little tube.
Bubble.
Forced to watch the same Rorschach video for like 50 years.
That, I if it were me, I'd hope someone would kill me too.
Right.
Maybe you start liking it.
Yeah, maybe after that's how I felt about Kung Fu Panda. I liked it at first, and I hated it after watching it so many times at Radio Shack, and then I loved it again.
I think you just became indoctrinated.
Pretty much. That's why you'll never hear me say a bad thing about that movie. So you eventually go through and kill the host. There's really nothing to it. You kill the host, although then the thing picks you up and throws you on the ground, and you're like, whoa, what happened? And you're limping out. You find the German scientist who's like, gotta murder you now.
And you get murdered.
Yeah, you get murdered. You get shot up. But then the screen goes black and you hear the notable noise of the Wallrider coming out of you and murdering all the soldiers and scientists. And the German scientists.
Yeah.
So you're just like, oh.
I got possessed.
Now
I'm the Wallrider.
Yes.
And that's the ending of the game.
Yes.
Well, until you play the DLC.
Yes. Yeah, which apparently Whistleblower is not only a prequel, but also a aftermath of...
Yeah, I've read some about that, so I know kind of the secrets.
I read a little bit about it too, so I stopped myself because Brad and I are planning to do Whistleblower.
Yeah, I can be spoiled, I don't care.
Yeah.
Well, this is just a wild ride from start to finish.
It kind of is, but it really kind of isn't.
Mr. Toads.
What?
Nothing. Just keep going.
My main thing with the game was like, well, I kind of enjoyed the experience because if you watch our Let's Play, clearly I am in the same boat.
You are very nervous.
Yeah, I'm very nervous. Yes, there are some cases where I'm nervous because Brad doesn't have survival instincts, but some of it is just because it's a tense environment to be in.
Well, you don't have any weapons. You can't fight back. Your only option is to run and hide, or just run and hope you get away into the next load zone. So it's designed to make you tense. It's designed to put you on edge.
And I think on the game design front, fantastic. Mm-hmm. But we're not talking about game design. Did it again. The story, I feel.
I hate you so much.
Yeah, I'm kind of
done with me too. I just feel like the story of the game. It doesn't really deliver itself to a full potential because it uses so many common tropes. And as far as the structure goes, by the time you're entering the final facility, you know I'm probably going to get killed and probably possessed by this thing once you know the nature of it.
Wasn't Outlast, it's kind of an indie game. Wasn't it designed a little bit probably more in the sense of... It seems like the kind of thing they weren't sure was going to do that well, and all of a sudden oh man, there's people want this, and they need to just tack on a story. So
that's what I'm not sure, because there was a comic book series that was run in tangent with it.
Oh really?
Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't think this is like a Five Nights at Freddy thing where it became a huge hit out of nowhere. I think this was a plan. Well,
I'm thinking it's more like because of the flaws that you can see in the way the story is constructed, it might reflect the way in which the game was put together in the first place. Whereas they put together this kind of game where it's like, oh, you're running away from people. They maybe didn't have a strong story to it until they realized they had some really good core gameplay mechanics, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, we have to have this done in a couple weeks. Well, let's just throw something together, which is why you see so much story in the last 15 minutes of the game.
Right, and that's where I because nothing is more important to a story than its structure, and this game seems to rely on...
What about its ending? That's a pretty important part.
Well, absolutely, but that's all inside of the structure of this whole thing.
The events leading up to it seem a little weak, is what you're telling us right now, is the events leading up to the climax is very weak, and it doesn't...
Because for the longest time, you're trying to meet up with this Father Martin character, this priest. He's like the only character you've really had any words with. Even though your character doesn't really talk. He only writes notes. That's how you get his voice, per se.
Yeah.
And then when you finally meet him, face to face, again, after your first encounter, he burns himself alive and you just walk out and you're like, okay, it was a crazy person doing what a crazy person does. So...
Well, you're in an asylum.
I know, but I mean, it just felt like there was no thematic value to it. It was one big MacGuffin that really just led nowhere. And then you go into this facility at the end, where all of a sudden it's almost like a complete tonal shift.
I do remember watching you guys play it, and seeing you get to the end, and you go to the elevator, and the elevator just kind of keeps going down again. Yeah. It's just like, what's going on now? I thought this was the end. We got through the end of the game, didn't we? Yeah. You guys have more to do.
Right, and that's exactly how it feels, especially because then now you're in a part of a facility that is fluorescent lights everywhere, high tech, as opposed to this old rundown asylum. And it's just...
Well, it feels like a rebuilt 1800s building, whereas what you're in later is something built in the 80s, bare minimum.
And you're walking through, and you're just like, okay. And then you have a couple cool sequences with the Wallriders. You're trying to run from it, but it seems like that's all there is to it. And there's not a whole lot of thematic element going into the game. So while we've spent so many other story modes on what are the themes, the thematics of this game, I feel like, and this is kind of where I'm relying on you for having watched the game, and maybe Taylor what she could pick out of it. I feel like it's a game that lacks thematic element.
Yeah, well, because I was gonna say it's. It really never seems like the story ever gets going in any direction. Where it's like, yeah, it gives you like a real bait and switch at the end. Whereas, consider how you guys are playing Until Dawn right now.
Yeah.
You guys just got to the point in the game where it swaps from being kind of a serial killer story to being an actual monster movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like the swap in that game isn't nearly as jarring or weird or off-putting. It feels very right in place just because it dropped enough hints about this is what the real nature of the story is going to be early on, that when you started getting those pieces from earlier, maybe you forgot about, or kind of just got like left aside.
He remembers being in the mine,
and when you pick up books and items, like you start to get they mention Native American lore, and so there's so it's this one just seems
totems,
whereas because I don't remember at any point up until you going down that elevator. I think someone mentioned Wallrider a couple times, but it's like
there's quite a few documents that mention something called a Wallrider, and you encounter it halfway through the game.
Yeah, but there's so little explanation as to what it is or what it's doing. That once you find out what it feels like, it's a case of way too little, way too late for finding out what it is. Like if you had maybe had a moment a quarter of the way through the game where you like maybe you fell down a shaft or something like that into one like enclosed off area of the way downstairs, built up, so you're like, what is going on here? Like you get that way earlier on, kind of this niggling like idea in the back of your head, like
that you can't forget it.
Yeah, something's really up here that I wasn't seeing
before.
before.
Build up the mystery. Yeah, because
so it doesn't completely feel like it comes out of nowhere.
You do encounter the Wallrider as you walk out into the courtyard, and he just kind of passes by you. He screams and really frightening and stuff. Like if you watch the video, I get really nervous.
Yeah, but I'm not even kill you there.
Yeah, no. And there's a couple little scares from it at the moment, but you're just like, what is it doing? It's not until you get below that it tries to kill you. But you learn that the Wallrider's only purpose was to keep the scientist in there, essentially. It doesn't really have another purpose, but you're just like, but why? Is this a thematic element they were trying to explore too, where it's just revenge against the scientist for doing his experiments on him? Mm-hmm. Is it that he's actually attached to this scientist? Because there's notes in there that says the kid was very fond of this German scientist. So is it just because, is he just so possessive over keeping some kind of humanity grounded that he keeps the scientist there? They don't really explore it, which is something that just baffles me. And then you have Until Dawn, which does a really good job of exploring everything up to the point that we're at. Like, we haven't finished.
Yeah, I don't want to. I just want to kind of bring that up as the shift.
Two horror games being in comparison to each other, I think is fair.
Even then, just like a sort of a mid-game shift where you you have like a real good sense of what the kind of game might be, but then a twist happens that like, okay, I see. This is a very different kind of game than I originally, which is not something that happens often. Really, one of the best games, like I think we covered already, is like Gone Home, but that shift is a lot more subtle and early on, where it's you think you might be playing a horror game at first, and then you slowly realize, oh no, this is actually just a drama game with just in a very dark, kind of scary place to kind of add to the nervousness and tension of what's going on.
Yeah. But it feeds so well into the overall thematic of it. Like you've been saying.
And because another game, I just played Firewatch, and that's another one I think actually does a very effective, kind of very similar thing, where you may feel like you're playing one kind of game, and then as you get through it, you can feel that almost a shift. It's like, oh, okay, I think I might be in this kind of game now. Mm-hmm. Whereas, Outlast, it's never really tried to fool you as to what kind of game you're playing.
Other than,
and Until Dawn it's just what kind of horror game you're in.
When you're
what are the horror
Traeger
rules?
Would be the only time I feel that is. But even then, you're kind of in the same hell, just with a different weird character.
Because the first whole half of it is a very just sort of straightforward, like serial killer kind of style horror game, and then even at the end, it tries. It's weird because it like almost wants to go fantasy, but it tries to justify everything in a very scientific way. Actually, it reminds me a lot of Fear. Did you ever play Fear?
Long time ago.
Because Fear kind of, I feel like has, if I'm remembering it correctly, has kind of a very similar storyline. But at least I think it kind of peppers in the paranormal element of the game a lot more frequently, where you're running into enemies who are just off and odd, so that when you get to the end and the paranormal stuff really kicks off, even though it's again all very scientific based in the way that it's constructed, I think at least I remember playing out much better and much more understandably.
Yeah.
Where you're not surprised by it shifting or like confused. Where
But
I feel like you are in
kind
Outlast.
it just clicks.
Which I feel like is particularly interesting for Outlast because it's a game about a reporter.
Exactly.
Who's someone who, I don't know, it feels like that kind of surprise shouldn't happen so often for a reporter. They should be, out of almost anyone, writers and reporters should be the kind of characters who can see these kinds of things coming.
Yeah.
And it's like, they like, I'm so into stories, I have so many stories told to me, experienced them, that I know what's going on. So, like, just the idea that they even guess or, like, you get any kind of foreshadowing from the character.
Yeah.
I think the big thing that the problem with Outlast is that it falls into the idea of, well, this gameplay is so phenomenal that the story doesn't need to be as strong as, like, Until Dawn or Fear, or even Amnesia. Amnesia had a strong story, and it was kind of the same...
yeah, because you can't fight anything.
You can't fight in that game.
Yeah.
All you have is a lantern that can go out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing, and it's where it's a fear-driven game. So I think when they created Outlast, they really wanted to focus more on the gameplay, because that's going to bring people in. It's something new. It's going to scare the crap out of you, and it's...
I think it's probably also true, because it's one of those games, too, it's, you watch people... It's probably one of the most accessible sort of horror games I've seen, where people can, most people can sit down and play it, and they're not going to nope out of it right away, even if they're kind of scared. Like, it's the game that kind of at least leads you along for a little bit, and, like, there's some people, obviously, like, Taylor might not be able to sit through more than an hour of it, but I could see her probably at least getting through... at least two the first time she runs into Smiley and into the big burly dude with his
Chris Walker,
the super crazy guy.
Yeah.
Who's just big burly guy trying to chase you down and kill you every time he sees you.
Yeah.
Did you rip out your throat?
He rips off your head, technically.
Which is weird because you're...
Because of the death animation?
Yeah, because of the way the animation plays, you're still just there looking at it. It's like, wouldn't my eyes go with my head?
Yeah, because in that one of the webcomics, it details the origins of Chris Walker, and he was a security guard who was carrying out murders for one of the top doctors in the facility or something by ripping their heads off, and he kept calling people little piggies, which is why in the game he refers to you as a little piggy, which is a strange connection. I don't know how... I've read this comic like 4 times now to try and get it, but the little piggy was his favorite doll as a kid that he kept as an adult, and he has a strange attachment to it, but yet at the same time he calls you little piggy right as he murders you.
What?
Exactly.
What?
So there's these weird elements that they keep putting in there, but it just
they don't
leads
click.
nowhere.
Yeah.
And you have this comic that is in tandem with it, but they do nothing with it.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, that's interesting. You have this grown man, especially now this mutated-looking dude, who has an attachment to a little piggy, but it makes no sense why he's doing it.
It sounds like they're trying to make him into the Bane, because remember, Bane is Osito.
Yeah, right.
I think it is just a case of trying to create a character who's... Because sometimes I feel like for games, sometimes things are created backwards, where it's like you create the obstacle and what it is and how it looks, and then you create its backstory because you have to program all that in first.
For sure.
And it's a lot easier to bring in a writer later now that we have all the stuff here, rather than do that beforehand and find out, oh, well, this idea doesn't work and this idea doesn't work, so we got to rewrite it anyway. So I'm wondering, I get the feeling Alex is probably just a game that the writing came probably well into the development phase. Whereas, they kind of very first...
maybe the writing was different until they started doing the game, and then they realized, oh, this is not going to work, and they had to do drastic changes.
And this is where I get to my ultimate question that I feel touched upon a little earlier when I asked the question, but now I'm at this point that we talk about video games all the time. We're doing them in story modes. We're doing them outside of story modes and how stories carry out and what draws you into a game. We did a story mode about the top 5 opening scenes or top 10 opening scenes in a game, and now I want to ask, is there cases where the experience overrides the story of the game to make it good?
I think it's certainly much more possible with a video game than it is with anything else.
Yeah.
There's, it's kind of the equivalent of, oh man, there's a couple really great sequences in that movie. Like, I told you I watched Captain America Civil War last weekend. I love the moment where Ant-Man gets really giant and, grabs everybody. It's like, it's a great moment in an otherwise incredibly boring movie to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's just Spider-Man. And any moment with Spider-Man, it's like, oh man, this is great. This is the movie I was hoping I was getting. And then everything else outside is kind of boring. It's sort of, it's kind of that case where it's like, I can very much see it happening, and it happens in movies, so it's like, it definitely happens in games, too. I guess the follow-up question to that would be, does a game lose meaning? Does it lose importance if that's the case? if its gameplay doesn't quite connect with its thematics or story in a way that allows the two of them to work together as effectively.
I would say that it varies from person to person, because to somebody who loves the idea of this as being a new concept for them, the story may not matter as much as the fact that this gameplay to them is so new and so great, it's going to be in their mind as, wow, yeah, this is a game that I really loved. Where to somebody who's been a seasoned gamer who may have had a few of these kind of games, maybe just like, you know what, I've played with something with a better story. I think it depends on person to person whether that value is still there or not, as for the story. Because to that person, this is amazing, maybe that, old German Nazi making satanic things is, oh my god, that's cool. But, again, a story is only is appealing to different people, and for us, this may seem a bit like, okay, well, this is a weird turn. To them, this was a plot twist that they freaking love. And I think that's the
well, sort of. I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, I kind of get what you're going at that. Yeah. But at a certain point, like, you have to kind of sit down and go, I love this plot twist, yes. You can love something, but it doesn't have to be good.
Yeah,
right.
Like, me and Ben are big fans of Kung Pao, but we're not about to pretend that that's a great movie. A classic of cinema.
I will tell you it is a great movie and a classic of cinema on my own love for that movie, but yeah, it's not.
I'm not going to try and pretend that movie is anything.
But
it's not.
It is freaking hilarious.
If you can get into its sense of humor. If you're not the kind of person who follows the sense of humor that this movie has, you're probably going to hate it because it's very one note the way it delivers what it delivers. But if you can get into it, it's hilarious, and you'll quote it for the rest of your life.
So back to kind of looking at things on the most objective front that we can. Because I'm not going to deny, because Brad might have loved Outlast from being it, and because he and I kind of talked about it, I'm like, I think that ending kind of ruined anything about the game that would have made it good. Because it became so predictable.
Well, I mean, but part again,
and it came out of nowhere.
Something that's too easy to forget. The ending is the central conceit of any story. Like you were saying, like, structure is the most important part of the story, which is why what about the ending, Ben?
Yeah.
I would argue that the ending is actually the most important aspect of a story, because that's what you're writing to. Mm-hmm. That's what you're telling the story to. That's what your central conceit and themes and all of that are pretty much going to be based around, and how your movie ends.
And that's how your
structure really doesn't matter nearly as much. Because I'd argue, too, against you in that I've played lots of games that are structured poorly, but once I get outside of them and can assess, like, oh, this, and this, and we've had story modes about this, like World of Warcraft, which is some of its stories told outside the game. But once you have access to that, you can put it all together. Oh, okay, I can see all this works together and how it all kind of starts to really mean something. So structure, I don't think, is nearly as important as
the ending.
Yeah, some like a conceit, that central conceit coming to fruition, and it doesn't have to necessarily be the ending. But some statement somewhere, probably at least close to.
For sure. Well, and with video games more so than movies, I always feel like that central conceit does come out of the ending. I say this often, which is ironic to a statement I said earlier about structure being the most important thing. I will level with you. Yeah, I will go back and say the ending is the most important part. I feel that way about when you're walking in a movie, what's the last thing you remember? You remember the ending. When you finish a game, what is the last thing you remember? The ending.
Because you're also working towards that ending, so that's the big payoff.
Yeah. And it has to be a good payoff, which is why I feel Outlast really dropped the ball. Because of the tonal switch, because of...
Yeah, I think it's one of those words. It would have been, I think, a lot more satisfying for it to have just been a very straightforward story about some guy. Like, the father really is just crazy. Like, he's just a crazy person who just assembled a bunch of people to him, and they're like, okay, this is what I'm reporting on, this crazy guy. And, like, maybe there's a person who is actually part of the hospital administration who helped him, like, escape or something like that, because they're just, for whatever, come up with some reason. So you can avoid all this other stuff, and, like, you end with a final confrontation with, like, Smiley on the roof or something like that, where you get him to, like, throw himself off or something. You lead him to falling off it or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, something that would... Because that, to me, is where it was leading more to, like a final confrontation with the big guy, who you keep running into over and over again.
He's your main antagonist.
And then, only for, again, like, in the last 15 minutes from the end of the game, for him to get killed by this other thing that you've been hearing about, but you really didn't realize was that big a threat.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of kind of... Yeah, it feels very weird, especially since how abruptly it happens in the game, too. Because it's literally like you're running back from someplace, he pops out of a door, grabs you, and you think, oh, I'm going to die! Like, or I'm going to have to run from him, and it's just this weird, quick cinema scene from there.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the way I thought it was leading up was, again, like, you're running away from Smiley, there's a big confrontation of either who created, so I thought Smiley was created, of Smiley's creator, you get out, and you get the news out, and that's... and then there's a big investigation, but that's how I thought. I would never have guessed for a second that there was going to be a crazy German scientist that, created...
Also, the nanomachines thing in particular
feels
very
that's really jarring. It's like, okay.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that, like... on the one hand, as far as, like, a horror genre goes, I felt it was so typical that you die at the end. To me. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then you get possessed. I'm just like, okay, so now we're going to... If we're taking that
was also one of the things I really disliked about it, too. Because, like, I think you say it in the last play. It's like, I'm going to be really disappointed if we get through all this and we die.
Yeah.
And, do you mind if I spoil it?
Go ahead.
Because I think you aren't actually dead. Like, you got possessed
As I
by the
understand
Wallrider.
it, I don't think
like,
you are.
And from what I understand, from what I've read, like, the character you play as comes to control Wallrider.
Yes, as I understand that too, yeah.
So it's not like you aren't actually dead, which is, again, maybe just a bit of a retcon because they realized people didn't like that ending very much.
Maybe.
Because it was one of those where it's, after struggling so much and kind of losing so much just to get to where you were...
Yeah, you go through so much shit just to die?
It feels a bit like a middle finger to have you just die. Even if it's like, oh, well, you got possessed. You didn't really die. You, like, transformed into something else. I still don't like that.
No.
Yeah.
I would have much preferred it if, like, maybe you got through all that, you had the choice to, like, either end everything and to kill the Wallrider or just escape, and if you tried to just escape, then you get killed.
Yeah.
That would have been way better.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like, you
give you, like, some agency in a game that gave you none.
Yeah.
Because the whole game operates on giving you no control, essentially.
Yeah.
Or, at the very least, like, having kind of a moment where you can put your, like, you're gonna die, so, like, you have a moment to, like, put your camera or upload it to the internet.
Yeah.
So it's like, I may not survive, but my work will.
Yeah.
Like, at least that kind of would have been...
Yeah, but that's the other thing. You lose it all. Your camera's gone by that point. It would have to be. So it's just like, well, what the was the point of me doing anything? I think that's where my big problem comes with the way the game is structured and building up to its ending was you're at the end of it, and when you're supposed to come away with something, you come away with absolutely nothing.
I like how both of our story modes, this one and the last one, actually have pretty much the same idea. It's like, man, this was pretty good, right up until the last act.
Yeah. So,
but if you had to, like, come up with a theme, maybe there's something there, what would you try for? Like, curiosity killed the cat?
If you want to look at, like, something vague and basic, that would be it.
Because I feel like that is, you're kind of stuck with the dumb, boring themes that are just sort of standard and rote that you just throw in
Brad
everything
and
else.
I point out, there are so many opportunities this guy could have escaped. If you want to put it in like a kind of a realistic front, which this game tries to more or less present to you. Like, we're in the courtyard, we're like, look at all those crates. We could have just put them next to the wall and hopped over. But instead, you go through these really convoluted ways to try and get out. It's just bizarre. There's a few open windows with fire escapes that you could have hopped out of. I don't know, there's just... Thematically, if I were to pick anything out that I'd be like, I liked, but I'm not even sure it's there, is the idea of why Wallrider was there.
You think there's maybe an obsession angle to what's going on? Because, I mean, there's the old scientist you run into is kind of... I think it doesn't say he's, like, supposed to be dead, but essentially his obsession has kept him alive.
His obsession and Wallrider has been keeping him alive.
Because that is kind of then what you do. You just kind of keep going because you're obsessed with the idea of a story.
Yeah.
But again,
that's the only thing I can figure.
Yeah, but again, it's still sort of... Especially for a video game, a very easy theme, because that's you can throw obsession onto any video game as a theme pretty much by default, because that's about the only thing that pushes people through is either A, curiosity to finish the game, or B, the obsession to just have a game completed because I started it.
Yeah.
So it's like, I feel like that's almost a cheat for any game at this point to have a theme about obsession or curiosity. It's just like, you can't do this. That's what's the thematic of games by and large as a medium.
Well, especially for horror games of all genres. That is one of the things. It's a curiosity that turns into an obsession because, alright, I'm going to finish this and I'm going to... Yeah, with horror games, that is probably the most common...
I mean, just look at Five Nights... That's pretty much what Five Nights at Freddy's is about.
Yeah, because we constantly ask, why would he come back the next night?
And it's the only thing you could have is obsession or curiosity.
Yeah.
And it's really just, it's a transference of what you're feeling into the character.
Which even that game gives you a middle finger because you get fired from that job.
Yeah, right. So at the end of all
Although
this...
that might be a reward.
Yeah, right.
That might actually be one of the few games like, yes, I got the bad ending. I don't have to go back.
To kind of cap things off, like, talk about the themes of this game and stuff, and then bring out the idea of experience versus story.
would you guys play another game like this where the experience superseded the story?
It really depends on the game.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those... I play games that certainly, like, the experience is certainly what they want you to be going for. But
if there's no sustenance behind it?
Well, that doesn't... I think that's a bad argument to make. The idea that without a story there is no substance to a game.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that we'd need to take a big story mode to take a look at. Because I would... Even as someone who's very story-driven in video games, I would disagree with that statement up front.
Yeah.
Like, I love story-driven video games. I want to play more of them. I pick them up every chance I can get, a good story. But I'm not going to take away the ability for a game to be really meaningful and moving without having a formal story within it.
Yeah. I'm guessing with this new Zelda game coming out, there's a lot of new elements that haven't been introduced in that kind of game before that we're going to see. And we'll have to see how it ties in with the story. I mean, it's like what Chris says, it depends on what it is exactly that would make it like so good that the story wouldn't have to be there. Because I'm a very story-driven person. There needs to be a story for me to like the game, and I don't think I've played many games where there wasn't a story behind it.
But I guess as far as like a horror game goes, to I guess narrow it down, especially in relevance to Outlast, because that was a pretty broad question.
Yeah.
To a horror game, is it worth it to just go through the experience without anything behind it? Is it not living up to a potential it could easily achieve?
I think for a horror game, it's probably a bit more of a cheat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because horror is such an easy thing to create in a game. Mm-hmm. Because you're the one in control, and just jump scares in general. You see how easy it is for Five Nights at Freddy's to scare the crap out of people. You just have to put it on, and Burtis goes nuts.
Yeah.
Or
as his background.
Don't have to have any sound. You just show him a picture of Freddy, and he'll just like jump out of his skin. So it's jump scares are easy to create, and I think terror and fear are not a very hard thing to create. It's just why they become very popular in games anyway. Which is why I think if a game's going to try and be like, oh, horror and being scared is like that's a theme. It's like not really. Like there does need to be something more there. Like what are you afraid of, or maybe trying to find a way to help you get past that fear.
I think with horror games, essentially, like there should be a little bit of a story behind. I mean, there should be a story behind it because how many horror movies have come out where it's more of the like Paranormal Activity? There's one. It's basically the same story over and over, and people keep going back for the experience of it and not for the story.
Mm-hmm. That being said, it's not like a horror movie has to have the most clear story.
Yeah,
because think about like The Shining, the movie. That becomes incredibly unclear as to like what made. I mean, you generally have no idea what's going on, but especially as it gets to the end, like the weirdness just kind of starts piling up, and you might get lost within it a bit. So I don't think it's necessarily like a game has to come up with a very clear, concise story, but it has to come up with a clear, concise meaning. Yeah. What it's scaring you for, perhaps. Rather than just for your Let's Play channel.
Well, for sure. That being said, what would your feelings be going? Because they are making an Outlast 2. It's in a different setting. You're in the boonies somewhere, so of course they're relying on crazy Southern people. It sounds like.
Yeah, because everyone who lives in the boonies is crazy.
Right.
Another trope.
Yeah, like it's basically like you're there with your wife and you get separated from your wife, and your goal is to find your wife. But based on the first game and how they presented things and how I've tried to describe them, like, would you go and say, yeah, I'll try Outlast 2?
No.
Outside of the purpose of, let's play. Like,
I'd watch you and Brad play it. Is that what you're asking?
Well, no, I mean, just, like, would you pick up the game?
No.
Probably not, no.
Yeah.
I mean, the first one didn't show me anything that was like, this is my kind of game. I'd really like to play this.
Especially with their dependencies on tropes? No.
Yeah.
Because especially now that there's a woman involved, no.
Because, again, sometimes at the end of the day, it's like, I don't want to be, like, that guy and be mean to people, because sometimes it's just bad writing. You just didn't nail it. And I'm not trying to be like, oh man, these guys suck and they're terrible writers.
Right.
Like,
Sometimes you just don't hit
Sometimes you just don't make it. Like there's enough videos on our thing here for you to watch through some Co-Operatives episodes and be like, some of these are pretty good and some of these are not.
Yeah.
And it's just like they're all pretty much written by me. It's just sometimes I get it and sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
It's the nature of it. But.
Yeah, and so and again, like sometimes video games in particular, the way they're put together can create a real challenge to doing that.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't think it's worth it to champion the games that really do nail that kind of idea. Whereas another horror game that we talked about recently that had deep, I think, thematics to it, Eternal Darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one had a lot to pull out of. There was a lot of content for a horror game.
You know, and not only that, but like the way, you know, you talking about how kind of things feed back into each other and create a great game, like the insanity effects and all that. It's like, here's an example of a game that took everything that it was trying to do and wrapped it all up into a nice bow. Whereas Outlast is like, we have some great gameplay, but we don't really know how to get a story to tie into that in a way that's going to be fun. Maybe they'll figure it out with Outlast. Maybe that's why they've switched it up so much, is so they can make it... maybe it's going to be a little bit more like a Deliverance kind of thing, where it's just you against people. And I might appreciate that a little bit more if it's just people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think my almost natural direction then for that story to have to be as well, then I think at a certain point you have to wonder if you're the monster too.
Yeah.
Like, I'd like to see that as a thing.
Yeah.
If that's going to be kind of a thematic
I feel like
there.
not many things...
That would have been a really somewhat predictable, I guess, but perhaps someone, I think, stronger conceit for maybe Outlast to have had is like, maybe you can't find ways to kill these people, and like at the end is like, you know, it kind of confronts you on that. It's like, you know, you're kind of a monster. It's like, these people are just helpless, insane people.
Yeah.
And you just murdered them.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's kind of all I got coming out of Outlast, which is as empty as my stomach right now. You know, I personally enjoyed my experience. I enjoyed my experience, but I think that's all it was. It was just like a roller coaster ride, and at the end of it, you're like, okay, that was good for a few thrills, and that was it.
Some video games are like that.
Yeah. And this just happens to be one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any closing statements? Otherwise, we'll call it a day.
Let's call it a day.
All right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm looking forward to... I think you and Brad should try and pick up Outlast too, or the DLC, to find out maybe if it clears things up.
That's what I'm wanting to toy with.
That is the one advantage of video games they'll give us. You know, sometimes you can release a DLC that will help fix some of the problems you had with your original story. It's like, well, we couldn't quite get it all right in time for the release, but we can fix things up with some DLC. So it at least makes sense.
Yeah. Agreed.
Dragon Age, looking at you.
It's true. Inquisition, like, I don't think that game is complete without the final DLC.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I haven't done that one yet.
Yeah.
You loser.
And on that note, we'll catch you guys later.
Bye-bye!